Now, one thing you may have noticed is that while we do have this form being returned and re-rendered, there aren't any error messages. Remember, we wanted that in this mockup. We want to have some error messages here corresponding to the things that are wrong with the submission. So just to refresh our memory, let's take a look at a console here. And I want to put in a user. Let's see, user.new. So let's make some invalid entries here. So let's do, so the name there is valid, but the email is not. So the password and confirmation will match each other, but they're too short. So let's save that user. It should not let me do it. It says false. That means the save didn't happen. And recall that we have an errors object now after trying to save it. Actually, I think before we saw it after we called user.valid question mark, but it happens when you do user.save as well. So user.errors, and you can see here that there are some messages. We're going to say full messages, .full messages. So these are the messages we'd like to put onto the web page. So you can see here in the mockup, things like this. This is where they're going to come from. Rails has synthesized these error messages for us, and we just want to put them on the web page now. So let's take a look at the new page. The way we're going to do this is we're going to make a partial for error messages. In fact, let's do this here. We're going to reuse this later on in the tutorial in lesson 11 for microposts. So this is going to be in a shared directory. In fact, this is not the kind of thing that will work out of the box with microposts, but this is a first implementation, then we'll refine it later in the tutorial. Remember, the way you render a partial is you put the name of the file minus the underscore. In this case, it'll be in the shared directory. So this is what it's going to look like. We're going to render some error messages, and that's going to give us this here, this area here. So we need to create this though, and this is going to be in the shared directory of the views, which does not currently exist. So let's make it. New folder, shared, and then new file. Remember the convention on partials. There's a leading underscore, so underscore error messages. .html, .erb. Not sure the B got, yeah, there it is. Okay, it worked. So now this error messages partial will render those error messages. Let's see how this works. We only want to render messages if there are any, and the way to do that is like this. So this is user.errors.any. This return is true if it's not empty, so there it is. In this case, it's true because, in fact, there are some errors. So if there are any errors, we're going to actually put in the explanation of the errors. So let's just put the end here. And that'll go inside a div. And we want to give it an ID in this case. We're going to say that this can only appear once on a page. Doesn't really matter. This doesn't get enforced. It's just good practice in the sense that the page won't validate if you have the ID on more than one tag. You may recall there's a shortcut if we do dot and then the name of the class and hit tab. This is just the IDE. Then it will create the div with that class. You can do this too with the, so the CSS ID notation. So let's call it error explanation. Hit tab. And then inside here I want div with two classes actually. I'm actually not sure if this will work. Oops, I want this. I want alert. And then I want a second class, which is alert danger. And these are bootstrap classes. So I want to say the form contains some number of errors. So we can do that here. This is going to be wrong for a moment. I'll show you in a second how to do it right. So at user.errors.count is the number of errors. Contains this many errors. then let's actually put the errors in as an unordered list. So that's a UL. And each list item will be one of the error messages. So remember, that's this here. You can actually just copy this. So for each of these messages, remember we have an @user variable. It's up here too. You can see why this won't work for microposts. We're going to have to change this so that it doesn't actually tie itself to the user. It works for other objects too, but for now we can just use the information we know, which is that we have an @user variable. So @user.errors.fullMessages.each do message, and then put in an li for each of these. And actually, I think the convention I use is to put these at the same level of indentation, and then so the indentation here for the li is one extra level from the ul. But it's not that important. But here we go. Save that. By the way, that count here, this here is just, that's a very general method. This can be called on all kinds of things. We can see here user.errors.count. Just insert the number of errors. There is something wrong though, I mentioned briefly, so see if you can figure it out. So this should actually be working. Let's take a look at this. Look at that. The form contains 3 errors. Email is invalid, password can't be blank, password is too short. So this is a really good start. There are a couple of things I want to do. I want to change the styling a little bit, and I want this box to be surrounded by some sort of color to indicate like which fields have errors. There's something else that's bad that you can see here. If I do this, make this valid, and then just have 1 error. So you can see here the form contains 1 errors. This irritates me. I see this all over the web. I see it in apps. It's amazing how frequently one encounters this mistake. But it's really easy to avoid. And in the case of Rails, we can use a really cool method called pluralize. Let me show you how that works. It's not included in the console by default. I'll show you here. Pluralize the word error when there's 1 error. You can see it doesn't work, but we can include the helper that does that. Action view, helpers, text helper, or text helper. So you can see that pluralize 1 error is just 1 error, and then if we do pluralize 2, that's 2 errors, and so on. And then I think 0 is also right. 0 errors is the usual convention. Yeah. So this pluralize method uses a really powerful inflector under the hood. So in this case, the inflection is the pluralization. So for example, we could do something like this. We could do pluralize, say, knows how to pluralize irregular plurals, things like woman pluralizes to women. And you can even do this. And erratum, the plural is errata. So it knows how to pluralize quite a lot of different things. And so we can use that in here to pluralize based on the user count, and we want to pluralize the word error. Like that. So now this sort of thing. Oops. What did it do here? Errors.count. Oh, I need to put a comma here, don't I? Oops, still not working. Did I just not save it? Let me check that. Ah, there we go. I just didn't save the file for some reason. There we go. The form contains 1 error. All right, I mentioned that I wanted to style this a little bit, so let's actually do that. I'm just going to copy in the CSS. There you go. This is part of the forms CSS, so we can go here, And that's, where's the forms? Here. So it actually is right at the bottom, so here we go. So now the error explanation ID will have a red color, and each of the elements in the unordered list will be red as well. And then I'm actually going to add in some extra styling on what's called a form control class. This is part of Bootstrap, and then this is a standard color. This is the color for danger. You can see here we did alert danger, so that's the color that's being produced right here. Right, this color is the danger color. So this is using a Bootstrap variable. Again, it's not important to understand where this comes from for the purposes of web development. But there is one important thing, which is we need to put this form control class on these elements here. So let's save this, and then on this page we need to put the form control class on each of these fields. So let's do that. Just add that to each of these guys. Let's see what effect that had. Great, that's really nice. So now we've got some coloring here. We've got this red color. We've got this color that came automatically, or actually came because we put this in here, this in the error messages. Put it here, the danger color. But so now we've got the danger color again in this area here. So you can see if we put in something invalid, now the field is highlighted. So that's really useful.